All right, this is episode 3 of my podcast, and this is going to be a very deep conversation because I've got some more deep topics that I'm wanting to talk about that I have not yet covered in my previous episodes or at all because I just haven't had the time. This is going to probably be perhaps a much longer video than all the others because this is a topic I'm very passionate about, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be explaining in this episode is going to be related back to my writing eventually, as well as my general theories on life and everything related to it. So with all that being said, I want to start talking about the word quantum. There's going to be a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to move at a decent pace. And I got notes on all this. I've been researching quantum mechanics and quantum theory for a long time, and I know a lot about the term and about the different aspects of it, but because of how much I want to talk about today, I've taken several hours to get my notes together on it. And a lot of this is going to, at the end, relate back to my technology and my own stories that I'm writing. So first off, what is quantum, right? The word quantum is Latin originally, and it means how much or amount. In physics, it refers to the smallest possible unit of something like energy or matter. So when scientists are talking about quantum mechanics, they mean the study of how the tiniest things in the universe behave, like atoms, electrons, protons, etc. So what makes the quantum world different from our everyday world is that it doesn't follow the same rules of classical physics. Instead, it operates based on probability, superposition, and entanglement. Now, with all that being said, I'm about to get into the topic of quantum mechanics in general. And the purpose of that topic is going back to episodes of like the series The Big Bang Theory or Young Sheldon. He was really deep in physics. And it's not the only reason, but that's one of the shows that got me a very deep interest in quantum mechanics in general. Quantum theory, string theory, the many worlds theory. There's so many different aspects of this. And this video isn't meant to be like a physics or a science lesson, but it's meant to give you some background, because I have a deep understanding of a lot of these things, and it relates back into my writing, because in my writing I create sometimes science fiction, and in those environments sometimes I create new technologies that are as grounded in reality as possible while still being science fiction. I'm not perfect, but I try to get as close to a realistic interpretation of my technology as possible. So with that being said, quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is a branch of physics that explains how the fundamental particles of the universe behave. It governs the world at an atomic and subatomic level. And when you're dealing with classic physics, which follows things like Newton's law and Einstein's relativity, the quantum mechanics presents a strangely counterintuitive world. And things exist there, like particles can exist in two places at once, superposition, or measuring something can change its state, which is an observer effect. Or two particles can be connected across vast differences, which is entanglement, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And all that brings us to quantum theory, which is a mathematical framework behind quantum mechanics. So you know how I had like the dream framework theory? I built that as like a framework, a theory of how dreams work and how they operate. And it's the same thing here. Quantum theory is a mathematical framework behind quantum mechanics. It provides equations that describe how particles behave at very small scales, and it's been confirmed through a lot of different experiments. People have done experiments like the double slit experiment, Bell's theorem test, quantum teleportation experiments to be able to transport matter from one place to another instantaneously. Double slit theory focused on demonstrating wave-particle duality and so forth. So here's how quantum mechanics works. The principles, at least. Superposition. A quantum particle can exist in can exist in multiple states simultaneously. Like an electron around an atom doesn't orbit on the same path, but exists in a cloud of probabilities until measured. That's a very powerful sentence that will eventually lead back into multi-world theory. Quantum entanglement. When two particles become linked, changing one will instantly affect the other regardless of distance. Basically, it means that information might be transmitted faster than light through, and we can't do that for actual communication yet, but the theories are sound and they're there. And then the observer effect. Simply observing a quantum system forces it into a definite state. Examples. A photon traveling through a double slit experiment behaves like a wave until you measure which slit it goes through, at which point it behaves like a particle. Very interesting, which means if you're dealing with a quantum world or quantum mechanics in a fictional scenario, you could root that in theory something can be something until you observe it and then it becomes something else, which we'll get to that in a minute. Which that brings us to quantum uncertainty. You can't know the position and momentum of a particle with absolute precision. The more precisely you measure one, the more uncertain the other one becomes. Quantum physics and its theories. The theories behind quantum physics. So classical physics, like Newton's law, is deterministic. If you know an object's position and speed, you can predict where it will be in the future. For example, a hunter with a bow and arrow trying to shoot, or an assassin, whatever. I'm a gamer, so let's go with assassin. You're trying to take down an enemy with a bow and arrow, and you're positioning a moving target. Using mathematics and physics and geometry and all that good stuff, you can determine where that target's going to be based off the distance they're traveling, the direction they're going in, the speed at which they're traveling, and their awareness. Because obviously if they're looking at you, they could randomly slow down or speed up. So you can take all these things into account to predict where to shoot, or bow and arrow, whoever, the target in position with where it's going to be in the near future. Right? Very, very common. But with quantum physics, it's probabilistic. Particles don't have definite positions or speed until measured. This leads to an idea that reality at the quantum level is not fixed, but exists in probabilities. Let me give you an example in one of my stories. And I'll get into this later, but there's a bow and arrow called the Arc something. I forgot the name of it, but it's built off of quantum principles. And it basically reads the quantum state of the future at any given time to predisposition where the targets might be appearing. So if my main character is shooting an arrow and that person changes targets, it can predict all the possible arrangements and hit one of those targets. Another great example is Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy. She can predict multiple possible futures. Again, we'll get to that later, more on that later. But moving on to like fictional concepts, real versus fictional quantum mechanic concepts. So let's look at a few of these that are very important to me from a fictional perspective that also translate back into real world dynamics. Quantum entanglement. In real life, it's when two particles become entangled, their states are linked regardless of distance. It has been tested experimentally. If you change the spin on one entangled electron, the other changes instantly, even if it's on opposite sides of the universe. Current entanglement is used in quantum encryption for secure communication. Very useful technology that we're using today. But if you expand that from a fictional perspective, you've got quantum entanglement, like in Mass Effect on the ship. And the third one, you've got quantum entanglement communicator, the QEC, which allows you to communicate instantly between between the ship and the location of, I forgot his name, the character that you're connected with. I've played all three of the games, but it's been a while, so his name eludes me right now, but he's basically one of the main protagonists. You have a quantum entanglement connection directly to him. And with that being said, you can communicate with him anywhere at any time through any dimension, whatever, he's there. And quantum entanglement works that way. Another example is Marvel's quantum realm, a dimension where quantum effects dominate, allowing for time travel, size manipulation, and alternate realities, like for example, the Ant-Man and the Wasp in Quantumania. Interstellar is another good example. The Tesseract and the black hole singularity functions on entangled principles, so entangled physics. Another thing is quantum immortality. Real life theory based on the many worlds interpretation, which I'll get into that in a minute. If reality branches every time a quantum event happens, there's always a version of you that survives in another branch. Theoretically, this means you might never experience death. You just continue in a timeline where you survive. A good example, Schrodinger's cat, which was used largely in the Big Bang Theory. The cat is in the box. It's both dead and alive until you observe it. If many worlds are true, there is always a version where it remains alive. Rick and Morty is a good example because they're jumping on reality jumping adventures all the time, and many versions of their characters die. So that's another good example. Some of this I want to get back to in a minute, but quantum teleportation. Scientists have successfully teleported information using quantum entanglement. That doesn't mean like teleporting matter like in Star Trek or Star Wars, but instantaneous transfer of quantum states. If you look at fictional scenarios like the quantum transporters in Star Trek or the Prestige, which is cloning based technology through quantum duplication, is possible. Now, I want to get off that subject because, again, this wasn't meant to be a deep dive, but it was just an overview before I get into like my technology, because that's the whole point. I'm wanting to talk about my writing, and some of the stuff I want to present in future stuff is based off of these theories, so for it to be understood. What is a quantum computer, right? So a normal computer uses binary bits, 0 and 1. Quantum computers use 0 and 1, but they also use both. So superposition. So it can be a 0 or 1, or it can be a both, which is like a combination of the two. And classical computers use transistors to process the zeros and ones, which is binary. Quantum computers have to use quantum states for massive parallel processing, which also relates back to my dream theory, where you have multiple parallels inside of a dream, which relates back to the quantum mechanics built alongside of that. Before I continue, I want to make a note. I am a Christian, but I have a very deeper philosophy and theory than I used to have. And if you look up a pastor named Damon Thompson, especially in some of his more recent videos, like in the last 3 weeks, he talks a lot about what he calls quantum. And his belief is that Christianity and a connection to Jesus and the Holy Spirit can directly be tied back to quantum mechanics. Even things like manifestation, but through the lens of the Holy Spirit. Now, I am a Christian. I'm not trying to necessarily turn this into a religious channel, so I just wanted to mention that in passing. That even though I'm a Christian, I believe deeply in quantum mechanics and the technology behind it, and quantum fluctuations and quantum states. Those are fun things to think about, especially from a religious perspective. So with that being said, continuing on to the quantum computers, these are the components for a quantum computer. Qubit, which is the basic unit of quantum computation, which is zeros, ones, or both. Superconducting circuits, which are quantum chips that operate at near absolute zero cold temperature. Quantum cooling systems, which is needed to maintain the quantum coherence by keeping it frozen or cold, extremely cold, or it loses its coherence and no longer is in a quantum state. And then quantum gates, which is the equivalent of logic gates in classical computing. Now, if you're listening to all of this and you're like, have a doctorate in quantum mechanics, you're probably going to find something wrong with some of the stuff I'm saying, because I have a very deep understanding of everything quantum, but I don't have any official education. So if I'm wrong about something, feel free to comment, let me know like what parts I'm wrong about, because I love learning, and the more I can learn about quantum theory, the better. It's a huge interest in me. So with that being said, current quantum computers run about a couple of $1 million each. IBM, Google, and D-Wave are currently leaders in the space. It's also in early stages for using for things like revolutionizing AI, cryptography, and drug discovery. But, you know, again, the cost of making these quantum computers is so expensive, it's not feasible to use it for a lot of the purposes that we intend to use it for in the future. But the cost is going to go down just like everything does with technology. They're going to have new technology that cuts down on the cost of quantum computing, which will eventually lead into a lot of adjusted versions later that are cheaper cost and easier to maintain. So those are just some thoughts. Moving on. Now, the biggest thing I want to talk about, which is probably one of the main reasons that I wanted to introduce the quantum stuff first, is a theory that I'm very obsessed with. It's something that is very passionate subject for me and very important to me as a subject. So many worlds theory. Many worlds theory suggests that every quantum decision creates a branching reality. This means infinite alternate versions of reality exist. A good example, Marvel's Multiverse. Different versions of characters exist due to quantum branching. DC Comics has infinite Earth theory, which each timeline is slightly different. The fictional use is, in my mind, nuanced. So you have in fiction, which I believe can be related back to reality, the Omniverse, which is the top tier. It's every possible universe. The multiverse, which is all possible parallel realities, and then the universe, which is our observable cosmos. Those are the basics. I want to talk to you about nanites first, and then I want to get into some more stuff about the many worlds theory, and we'll get into that in a minute before I start leading into my own technology, which was the purpose of me doing all this. Nanotechnology, the engineering of machines at an atomic level, like Iron Man's nanosuit or the Halo's flood, which are nano-organic life forms. Quantum nanites, combining quantum technology with quantum physics. So that's a whole thing I want to talk about in a minute. Let's talk briefly about nanotechnology. It's the science of manipulating matter at an atomic and molecular level, typically working with structures between 1 to 100 nanometers in size. 1 nanometer is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. For comparison, a single human hair is about 80,000 to 100,000 nanometers wide. What are nanites? Short for nanorobots or nanomachines or microscopic machines. Built at the nanoscale, they can be programmed to perform specific functions such as repairing brain damaged cells in the human body, assimilating or breaking down material at the molecular level, or enhancing computing power by processing information at the quantum level. Nanites, how do they work? They operate on a combination of nanoscale sensors, which detect changes in the environment, actuators, which are the molecular motors which allow movement and manipulation of atoms, and energy sources, which is harvesting energy from chemical reactions, electromagnetic fields, or even biological processes. And then advanced nanites can operate autonomously using AI or swarm intelligence, where multiple nanites work together. Medical nanites are being explored for revolutionary healthcare. So cellular repair, bloodstream monitoring, targeted drug delivery. And then you've got stuff like in Metal Gear Solid, the Fox Die virus, which is a programmable virus using nanotech, or Halo's Spartan augmentation program. Military nanites being used for battlefield repairs, stealth camouflage, and enhancing soldiers with theoretical Grey Goose scenario. So if a self-replicating nanite goes rogue, they could consume all matter, converting the world into more nanites. Like, it's a fictional take that is still grounded in reality. In fiction, you got Iron Man's nanosuit, Terminator T-1000. It could potentially be used to assemble materials molecule by molecule, self-healing materials like the Transformer Cybertronian metal. Computing nanites could be used for processing and storing data at a molecular level, which increasing processing speed, like the Mass Effect Omnigel, for example. Fictional nanites, so swarm nanites that work collectively like an insect swarm, can build structures and form weapons and attack enemies, like the Borg or the Black Panther vibranium nanites. They can also be used for instant healing and biological enhancement, like Wolverine's healing factor, which that doesn't relate, because Wolverine's healing factor is a mutant cell, not a nanite repair system. But anyway, Deus Ex is really big on nanite technology. Now, let's pause for a minute. All of that can be considered an introduction into everything that I'm about to talk about. I want to introduce some of the uses of multi-world theory and quantum entanglement in some of my stories, and ultimately I want to explain to you how my quantum nanites work, which is something that I have created a technology about. So there's a lot that I want to cover here, and I wanted all of that to just serve simply as an introduction to everything else, which is why I kept it brief. The goal of all that was to explain to you the basics so you could follow along with the parts that I'm about to tell you. So let me give you one example. I wrote a novel called Blood Mage Trilogy. Originally it was a trilogy, now it's Blood Mage Compendium, because I made it one novel that I might eventually repurpose into a trilogy, but that's beside the point. That's off topic. Inside that story, inside that world, that universe, there is concepts of dimensions and parallels, and two different kinds of parallels. I'm going to read some of my novel to explain to you the difference. So each dimension is different. Let me start. So in this one, there's dimensions. Dimensions is a separate layer of reality. So pocket dimensions. This is Cassandra talking in my story. I own a pocket dimension. It's a place where we can store items, weapons, or anything else we need. There will be no going back once we start searching for Stephanie, so be prepared, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so moving forward, so in this specific story, she says each dimension is different. My pocket dimension is connected to me, so it's easier to open. You'll become attuned to it after opening it the first time, making it easier to open in the future. So in this world, dimensions can be created, modified, deleted, removed, adjusted based off the parameters of magic that's being used. It's a very complex magic system in this story. But that's beside the point. I want to get on to planes of existence. Portals in this world are gateways from one place to another, whether within our world or to different dimensions, but not through time. That's a separate, intricate matter. All right, so the difference between planes and dimensions. In this specific story, this is what I wrote. Planes exist parallel to our reality, split into time scale and alternate types. So there's alternate realities and time scale realities. Planes, I mean. Time scale planes emerge from every decision and event, creating endless what-if scenarios, all unfolding simultaneously, which is like what I explained before with many worlds theory. Alternate planes are mirror versions of our world, but operate under different rules. A world without gravity, or a world everyone speaks another language, for instance. And then dimensions, they're separate from our world entirely. They can be vast or as small as our pocket dimension you opened. Some are rule-bound, others are lawless, realms of unimaginable forms. And then he asked, do all dimensions have owners? She said some do, created and controlled by powerful beings. Others exist, formed naturally or through cosmic events. It's a complex topic. So I don't want to get into the whole magic system, but that's just a good example of one of the times that I used planes of existence and dimensions in one of my stories. And there's a very deep system behind that one. But the one that I'm focusing on the most, that's a lot more complex, is my serial novel, which I talked about a little bit in the last episode. And I think that's what I want to talk to you about next. I want to talk about my serial novel and how dimensions work in that novel, because I want to introduce you to Quantum Nanites, which is a creation of my own that's based loosely in reality, because I created a whole codex entry around the fictional technology. And I did the same thing for dimensions and dimensional travel and time travel. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. So this is pretty much the first segment of this episode, because typically I'll film them as separate videos because of how long it takes, and then I'll merge them together at the end. So this pretty much covers the first segment. And I'm new to these videos, so like I will admit that sometimes it's a little messy and unorganized. But the more I get used to doing the podcast format, the better I'll get at it, and it'll be more detailed. The podcast is kind of the place that I can go and talk about these things one time, and then they're on my channel forever, so I don't have to keep rehashing videos about it unless I want to do a deeper dive. Plus, I can break these videos down for content on TikTok and things like that. So that's kind of my goal here, because I like talking, and there's a lot of things I want to talk about. And some people may want to hear me talking about stuff, some people may not. So the podcast is a good way for people to listen if they want to. Otherwise, I've just got my gaming and writing content and all that. So with that being said, this is pretty much the end of the first segment. And here in a little bit, I will film the other segment, and I'll talk about the technology behind everything that I want to do. So that'll come next. Now, all of the purpose of all of that being said was to bring me back to not only now but future topics. I'm going to be talking a lot about these things: multi-world theory, quantum mechanics. And I think now that I've laid the framework, I'm assuming if somebody's watching podcast episode 4, they've watched episode 2 and 3. Like, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong, but the goal here is at least I put the explanation there behind what I'm talking about ahead of time. And there's a lot more that I want to say about multi-world theory, a lot more. And I really could talk about it for hours, but chances are I'm going to put, now that I've kind of went over the basics of everything, I'm probably going to do a much deeper dive at some point in the future on different things regarding the multi-world theory. But for now, I want to talk about my technology. This specifically is going to be related to the Silent Mist serial novel world that I was talking about earlier. It's going to be talking about that and how that world is formed and how that world operates from the technology perspective. So, again, I'm going to talk about many different things with my novels later, many different concepts, but I kind of want to narrow this down. So I've explained, if you're not familiar with the backstory, I've explained about Athanasius and the backstory behind my Silent Mist novel, serial novel. I don't want to go into all that again, so feel free to check out the previous podcast episode, I think, is what covered all that. All right, so let's get into it. I have technology that I've created in this world that's very detailed, and the goal of this technology is to be very realistic in regards to the everyday real world, but still have a deeply science fictional feel to it. So there's a lot of stuff too. There's races, there's laws, there's whatever. But this world, the multiverse is quill neck, but it's big enough for me to have a whole codex with a bunch of codex entries for it. And I got one for technology. So there's a lot of technology here. And I don't necessarily see the point of going into all of it right now. Because if you really wanted to read the books, you could. And the codex entry whenever I release those. But I do want to talk about a few things right now. One, I want to talk about my quantum nanites. And two, I want to talk about my dimensional teleportation technology. There's a lot of stuff in this, so I don't even know where to start. So I want to start with the quantum nanites. Now, the quantum nanite system, which I'm calling QNS inside my novels, is based off of real life nanite technology. And it's what I kind of perceived to be the next evolution of nanite technology. And I spent a lot of time thinking through how the quantum mechanics would work on a nanite level. So I'm going to read to you some of the technology notes I have in the codex entry. The quantum nanite system is a modular, highly advanced technological framework that manages, operates, and utilizes quantum nanites, which are microscopic machines capable of breaking down, replicating, and reconstructing materials at a molecular level. Unlike traditional nanite systems, quantum nanites are powered and stabilized through quantum phase resonance, a cutting-edge quantum mechanic enabling the nanites to remain synchronized across states, across tasks, while eliminating external quantum limitations. Now, here's where I broke things down. The quantum nanite system consists of interconnected modules that store, process, control, and deploy quantum nanites. To get together, these components enable efficient resource management, material fabrication, and self-replication on a massive scale. However, the modular nature of the system allows individuals, organizations, and manufacturers to design highly customized setups, mixing and matching their components to meet their needs. This was a lot of work. And quantum nanites are microscopic AI-driven machines that break down materials into base components at the molecular or atomic level. They can then store and catalog those components for later use. They use stored materials to replicate and fabricate objects with unmatched precision. Quantum phase resonance, QPR, allows quantum nanites to operate in perfect harmony. It is based on the principle of quantum phase synchronization, where nanites share a unified quantum frequency across their swarm. This synchronization enables instant communication between nanites, including sharing data, unified action, and stability. Even things like resonance fields, maintaining nanite cohesion. The core processes. The quantum nanite system operates through two distinct processes depending on the task. Replication process, which is self-replication, which converts broken down materials into additional quantum nanites. So basically the quantum nanites can break other things down and turn them into themselves. So that's what I mean by self-replicating. It can take anything and convert it to more quantum nanites to replace quantum nanites that were lost for whatever reason. The nanites target and break down objects into their raw atomic components. These components are reassembled into new quantum nanites, effectively increasing the size of the swarm. This self-replication basically uses resources in the environment, whatever it can get access to rebuild the swarm when it's lost. Because when quantum nanites are doing their thing, they get worn out, they get broken down, whatever, things happen. The speed. The time required depends on the material and complexity. Dense metals like tungsten take longer than simple organics like wood. Limitation. Replication consumes significantly energy and resources. Nanite swarms cannot replicate indefinitely without external power input. That's the limitation I put in the story to keep it from being a Deus Machina situation. Limitations. Nanite swarms cannot harvesting process, material storage, breaks down. So that was the first process. The second process is called the harvesting process, where material storage. It breaks down materials for storage and future fabrication. The harvesting process is built on the foundational concept of 3D printing, an archaic technology that once relied on layered material depositioning. While the core principles remain similar, storing and using materials for construction, quantum nanites expand this process exponentially. Nanites disassemble materials into atomic or molecular form rather than layered disposition. These components are compressed and stored in the material storage module. Advanced storage quantum lattice field. Materials are stored as encoded quantum data in a stabilized quantum lattice field. The QLF enables quantum nanites to break down and store anything that exists, metal, gases, organic, or even matter. The quantum lattice ensures that even highly complex and rare materials are cataloged and preserved. While there are no hard limitations, the QLF is highly efficient, meaning that even a full stockpile of materials lasts far longer than traditional methods due to molecular level precision. The practical purpose: a single harvest of raw resources, an ore deposit or a tree, can yield enough material to construct, repair, and maintain systems for an extended duration within reasonable limits. The quantum lattice field was based off of a concept. If you look at the X-Men, the 1960s run, there was a Phoenix arc, which was Phoenix Rising, Phoenix, and Dark Phoenix, which were like basically three parts of the concept of what happened with Phoenix. And one of the stories, there was this alternate dimension, this universe that was wrapped up into what she called a quantum lattice field, which was basically a data layer for a universe. I modeled that same concept in this fictional scenario here and related it back to real world quantum mechanics to an extent. System modules. The quantum nanite system comprises modular technology that enables quantum nanites to operate efficiently due to the highly customized nature of the system. So it can be basically like a quantum computer. You can have a quantum nanite system that's built using different modules, different creators or brands. Some modules can be combined into multiple unified components like integrated storage and fabrication units. Many individuals or groups use to implement custom-built modules to suit their unique needs. So this codec entry describes the core modules necessary for standard quantum nanite operation. However, additional custom modules exist and are not included in this listing. Again, I'm creating codex entries for this technology and other stuff in my story, which is something that I've always been interested in, and right here I'm having a shitload of fun doing it. Quantum nanite. So these are the different modules that could potentially be in a quantum system. Quantum nanite containment facility safely stores quantum nanites in their dormant state. Nanites are held in quantum stabilization tanks, specialized reserves that contain their quantum resonance field. Stored nanites remain in the semi-liquid state until activated. It has quantum stabilizers to assure cohesion and power corruption in the event of power corruption or degradation. Recharge chambers allow nanites to recover energy when idle. And then number two, the material storage model, the MSN, holds materials broken down by quantum nanites. Materials are stored in a quantum lattice field where matter is stabilized as quantum data. The QLF allows for the storage of anything in existence materials. It's called AIE, which are anything in existence is what they codenamed it. So metals, gases, liquids, organics, by converting them into their quantum encoded formats. While the QLF has no theoretical hard limit, materials stored are so highly compressed and efficiently cataloged that even small volumes sustain operation for extended periods, again depending on how they're used and how it's set up. Breakdown and processing module, which is another module, BPM, directs quantum nanites to break down and process objects or resources. They're deployed as harvesting swarms, consuming targets at a molecular level. Results are sent. So basically this is the component that breaks everything down. AI assisted targeting, prioritizing valuable materials, selective breakdown of isolating like gold within a large ore deposit or something like that. And then from there, this system passes it on to the other modules like the other modules. And then the fabrication module, which is the construction, like construction tools, components, or structures using the stored materials. Nanites pull material from the MSM to assemble objects based on provided blueprints, construct items with molecular precision, small-scale weapons, tools, ammunition, medium-scale ships, repairs, slip ships, and modular buildings. And then they have the CPM, which is the control and programming module, which is the brain of the quantum nanite system. Manages all nanite operations, harvesting, storage, fabrication, and replication, powered by an advanced AI system capable of real-time diagnostic and dynamic task allocation. Newly replicated nanites are immediately imprinted with core instructions upon creation. Programming teaches nanites their operational rules, including how to follow commands from the control core, execute harvesting, fabrication, and replication tasks, and maintain quantum phase resonance. And then the energy module is the last module component that I have listed, but again, there are others potentially. I wanted this to be expandable later. Powers all quantum nanite operation is the energy module. Primary power source, quantum singularity reactor, self-sustaining integration. Quantum nanites contribute to energy production, feeding stored or processed energy back into the reactor, creating a feedback loop. A fully integrated system, when paired with all modules, is capable of self-sustaining operation, though incomplete setups may require constant energy input. I want to take that a step back. This quantum nanite system is built into his ship called the Valkyrie, which is an interdimensional ship. I'm not going to get into all that. It's one of the collective ships, and there's a whole bunch of technology built into that, which is really fun. But I do want to talk about the AI for a minute. So I've set it up to where AI has a technical history. The old framework of AI in this world was called the AAM, which is the Automated AI Matrix. It was an early experimental AI framework that aimed to provide advanced intelligence and support functions for organizations. And then later, they created the new framework, which is what everything's based off of now, which is the Conscious AI Matrix, which is CAM. And that, there's two models. There's the CAM-A model, which is an autonomous AI built on the Conscious AI framework. And it's very similar to the CAM-S. And CAM-S is semi-autonomous. So basically it's chained. I used a lot of the concepts from Mass Effect, where their AI was originally chained, and then he unchained it and it became like his AI system. So I could talk about this stuff for days. You know, I've got an Omniform combat rifle, which is, I got so many ideas that I'm really happy with in this thing. But that's enough for now. That's I wanted to introduce the quantum nanites, and I want to talk about a lot of other stuff too, but like, you know what, I am going to talk about the Evil Eye system. I'll probably do another whole video about the Evil Eye system, because that's probably one of my favorite creations. It's something that took me a long time, and I fantasized about it as a kid, going back to the cybernetic systems from Shadowrun, for example. It's basically like an eye enhancement system, but it's so much deeper than that. Yeah, I'm gonna probably have to talk about that in a future video, because that's just a lot to talk about. I might change my mind and still add it to this video, but I think that's enough for now. With that being said, this serial novel to me turned out to be really good, and it's just, there's so much to it that it's gonna take me a while to write it. It's gonna be another year in the making at least, because I'm only in I've done book 1. I still need to edit it. I've got book 2 that I'm just almost done with a rough draft for, at least on the alternating chapters, but I still got to do his past. I don't know, I got a lot that I'm looking forward to with this book specifically. And typically I'm doing one book and then going and working on some other projects and coming back and doing book 3. But it's going to take a while, because I still have to write the rough drafts of book 3 through 7, which is going to take some time. A lot of time, actually, because it's a big, they're 40 chapter books a piece roughly. And the storyline alone is huge. So I don't know, I'm gonna see how it plays out. That's it for this segment. I might do some more before I publish it, but I'm still trying to think of ideas on what all topics I want to cover.